Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Rockstar Women with MS Backstage TV. And thanks for tuning in to our expert interview series that we're doing as a special series during this MS Awareness Week. And today, our special guest is Nurse Rita Mammano, who is a certified multiple sclerosis nurse and a level 2 Reiki practitioner who offers a holistic nursing approach to patient care. And thank you, Rita, so much for being with us today. I really appreciate your taking the time out to answer some questions for us.
Well, thank you so much, Lisa. I'm very happy to be here.
Now, Reiki is something that's really fascinating, and one of the reasons I did want to interview you is that a lot of us living with MS are looking not only into physical therapy, but other types of healing therapies that can help us with symptoms relief. And Reiki seems particularly interesting. And what exactly is Reiki?
Well, Reiki is it's a relaxing, gentle art of hands-on healing. It's a type of complementary modality that deals with energy work. And that word Reiki means Rei is the universal spirit and Ki is the vital force energy, similar to like Qi of Chinese medicine and the light to Christians. So that's what Reiki is.
And it's very interesting when you're talking about energy work that, that already makes it seem like a much broader things are involved. Now, what I have heard about Reiki, I'm not a specialist in that at all, is that it recognizes the body's own ability to heal itself, and it basically says that the person who the healing is being performed on actually has an active part in their own healing. Could you explain a little bit more about that?
Exactly. Well, Reiki, I think, falls under the category of complementary healing modalities. And I always like to use the word complementary rather than alternative healing modalities, because being a multiple sclerosis nurse and working in the medical field, I really must believe in the Western medicine that we use now. That's called allopathic medicine. And I believe strongly that it's a very powerful marriage of Western medicine and the complementary modalities, that they work well together, not one instead of the other. And complementary modalities, they all have their origins in ancient healing arts. And like you said, Lisa, they really acknowledge the body's innate ability to heal itself. And it makes a person an active part of their healing, and they acknowledge the whole person, the body, the mind, and the spirit. So that's why that's what Reiki is. And the other thing, sometimes, like a little bit of a word of caution here, is sometimes when we think of complementary modalities, we talk about the person being part of their own healing and how their thought process and all these things are very important. But it doesn't mean that a person's thoughts will cause a disease, or that, they can't heal themselves because of their thoughts. It's bigger than that. And that's sometimes a pitfall of when I think that people think of complementary modalities, sometimes I think that that's just something to be cautious of, that it's not because you're not thinking right that you have a disease, but the mind is very powerful, and you can harness this universal energy for your own good. And a lot of other therapies deal with energy work. Yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, these are all examples of harnessing and working with the flow of energy in the body. Acupuncture.
Wow, and that's a really important point that you made about the idea that a person's thoughts can't make them sick, but they do have the power if they are helping to harness the energy. They do have an influence on whether the person can help heal themselves or not. Is that correct?
I think that is correct, and I think that like really talks about this present talk about wellness, what wellness is, and it's not, wellness doesn't mean the absence, of disease. That's not what wellness is. It's a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. And actually, when I was looking at your website, I was thinking that you were doing so much work to promote wellness, and it's all kind of connected in a way. And when I also think about multiple sclerosis, I think that like MS, I was thinking it magnifies the significance of the importance of self-care, of wellness. We all need to do this. We all need to know how to live healthy and peacefully in this world with our bodies, our minds, our spirits, our relationships. And with MS, it's even more important because we do know that since we're a combination of body, mind, and spirit, everything interacts. So when you're very stressful, it doesn't help. Like many times people will notice that when they're very stressed, it sometimes exacerbates their MS symptoms, and that happens with everyone, but with MS, it's even more important to really think about living a more peaceful kind of a life if you can. You're living in the world, but these kind of modalities are pretty attractive to people with MS because of that.
Right, and that actually sounds very encouraging because the idea of that, the idea of the energy and how we're living and what kind of wellness actions we're trying to take, the idea that can actually influence our healing or influence, whether there's any improvement, I think that actually seems a little more empowering and makes us feel a little more hopeful. I think a lot of times MS patients, we feel a little frustrated or maybe a little stuck thinking there's nothing we can do because we hear that famous word stable. Oh, well, it will keep you stable. And that makes it sound like, well, there's nothing you can do. But the idea of this larger energy piece and how we can be actively involved in that, it definitely sounds more encouraging and even kind of empowering.
Exactly.
So, one of the reasons that I wanted to interview you is that you have expertise in MS in the medical field, and you're also a Reiki practitioner. So let me ask you, what inspired you to learn Reiki?
Well, I was inspired to learn Reiki because I really wanted to know if there was something more that could be offered than just the allopathic medicine with that system. So I really explored different types of energy work. I took courses in therapeutic touch and other modalities, but Reiki really, really spoke to me. I love Reiki because it's very, very powerful and it's very, very simple. When the Reiki practitioner is not responsible for healing. The Reiki practitioner serves as a conduit or a vessel for healing energy that the person receiving Reiki draws in. So that's a wonderful thing. And it's an oral tradition. I'll tell you a little bit about how I learned about Reiki, but that's why I was drawn into Reiki. It was something that was very, very simple and very pure and very powerful, and it works. So those are the reasons that I was drawn to Reiki.
Right. Wow. And can you give me a little background on the type of Reiki that you studied or how that came about?
Yes. I studied under the Usui system of Reiki, and that's the purest, simplest form of Reiki. Like if you go online, you'll see a lot of different things and different methods of Reiki, and there are ways of being a Reiki master in like a weekend, but this system is just pure Reiki, and it's very pure, and it was given by an oral tradition. And the tradition of Reiki, it was the legend goes, and this is that there was a Dr. Usui, and in the late 1800s he was a professor, and he was challenged to ask about how laying on of hands works. In the Bible, they talked about the laying on of hands, and so he went on a research project and searched many libraries all over, and he finally came on some ancient Sanskrit writings that talked about healing touch. And he then meditated on a mountain for 21 days, and when he came down, he had the ability to heal. He was given certain symbols, and if a person learns Reiki, and anyone can easily learn it, the Reiki master teaches them the different positions, hand positions, as well as a series of blessings or attunements that make the practitioner open to the healing energy.
Wow, and you mentioned the healing touch, and I think a lot of people are familiar with or have heard of that concept of the laying on of hands, and so that is very powerful. And it sounds like there's definitely a spiritual element to it as well, in addition to, I guess, the idea of the energy flow in the body, but it does sound like there's definitely a spiritual element. Is that the case?
That certainly is. It is very spiritual, and everyone has a very powerful spirit, and that's what can focus in healing energy. So Spirit, that word spirit, is a relationship with a power greater than ourselves. That's what a spirit is. When we think about holistic health, we think about body, mind, and spirit, and that's the spirit.
Right. And I think that's something that we kind of forget sometimes too, that there is some energy that's greater than what we can see ourselves or which shows up on our MRIs necessarily. So that is definitely something to keep in mind. And what are some of the benefits that someone with MS might experience from doing Reiki sessions?
Well, everyone experiences things differently, and I think that we're not sure exactly. Everybody gets things differently from a Reiki session, but usually during a Reiki session, people experience a very deep relaxation. They sometimes get into a meditative state. They sometimes might feel some heat, and I think I had shared before that sometimes you don't really have to have an expectation. When I first started doing Reiki with MS patients and with other people also, like a person would come in and say, okay, so you're going to make my arm feel better, and it doesn't really work that way. It's what the energy draws in. So most people feel very relaxed. A lot of people feel a relief of physical symptoms. They might feel better from aching or spasms. They might have more energy. They might have more mental clarity. Usually they have a feeling of peace and deep relaxation. And Reiki works whether the person is a believer of Reiki or not. It's not really in the placebo effect because if you don't believe it, it still can work. But
that's good to know. So you don't have to go in as a believer in it to benefit from it.
Exactly.
Right, and it sounds like it's kind of a whole body healing thing, like you were saying. It's not that you go in and, your arm is bothering you, and at the end of the session your arm is fine. It sounds like it is more of a whole body balanced energy thing,
I would say. And
that, that's beneficial too, especially the relaxation part of it. I think we could all use quite a bit of that, especially those of us with spasticity. I imagine that could be very helpful. So what usually happens in a typical Reiki session?
Well, a typical Reiki session lasts at least an hour, with time talking to the practitioner before and after. And usually I might use some candles, maybe aromatherapy, and some nice music. And I have you lie on a massage table so the person lies on a massage table fully clothed, and then in the traditional way there's like 13 different positions, and the Reiki practitioner just gently places her hands on these different positions throughout your body, and the positions are really associated with chakras, in the Chinese medicine, the energy centers. And that's what a typical Reiki session is like. But there's other ways of doing Reiki. Sometimes there's like spot Reiki or something we call chicken soup Reiki, just doing a little bit of Reiki here and there,
Reiki.
like chicken soup Reiki, just a little bit. Like in the office where I work, sometimes a person would come into my office feeling anxious or worried, and we just check their blood pressure and maybe just do a little spot Reiki while they're sitting on the chair, a couple of different positions. And in this tradition, there's also distant Reiki healing at a distance, and that's actually a very powerful tool that works also. And I think of it as like concentrated prayer. So that's
at a distance.
That's what Reiki too.
Does that mean that the person doesn't have to be physically in the office with you?
That's right. Yes, that's right.
Wow, how does that
so that's
work?
That's distant healing, and I know that it does work also, and I think it has to do mostly with intention and prayer and sending the energy.
Wow, that's fascinating. Now, is there anything that someone would have to do to get prepared to go to a Reiki session? Like, is there anything they have to do, or can they just show up as they are?
Well, I think you can just show up. It's nice to wear comfortable clothes like sweatpants or something like that. And generally after a Reiki session, it's a good idea to drink a little bit more fluids. But that's about it. And the other thing is anyone can really learn to do Reiki. And the other nice thing about Reiki is you can do it on yourself, which thank you, Lisa, for having me talk about Reiki, because it's been a part of my life for about 25 years now, and it's something I hate to admit that I take for granted, because the practice of self-Reiki is really critical, and I forget. So, doing Reiki on yourself it aids in meditation, and it's a very powerful tool that I don't use that much sometimes. So thank you for reminding me all about Reiki.
Well, thank you for mentioning that, because that seems important to know, that one could learn how to actually do that on oneself as well. That's wonderful. So if someone's interested in trying Reiki, what kind of things should they look for in order to find a qualified Reiki practitioner?
Well, I think just like with everything else, you really need to use your intuition and your good common sense. And I would stay away from anyone who says, I can heal your MS, or I can, cure your MS, heal your MS, and stuff like that. So I would look for someone who is, centered and humble. That's what I would think about in terms of Reiki.
But they don't necessarily have to look for a certification or something like that?
Well, people that have taken Reiki are certified in Reiki training, yes.
Okay.
So you find someone who's Reiki trained. I keep being drawn to this person. Her name is Pamela Miles. She has quite a Reiki practice on the Upper West Side, and I read her book, and the reason I really like her is because she was trained in the same Usui system that I was trained in, and she offers Reiki classes and courses and everything. So that's one person that I do find interesting. I never spoke to her, but I do find her approach very, very interesting, and that's one thing.
Wow. So we would be looking for somebody who's certified, trained, and also a humble person who's not making claims that they can heal your MS and things like that. Right.
And sometimes they sometimes use other systems which aren't bad, but they maybe use crystals and stuff like that. But that's okay too. You just use your own your own good judgment. I think that's the biggest tool that you have.
Right, absolutely. Well, wow, Rita, this was really amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us a bit about Reiki. And for anyone who is curious, do your research and take, you can listen to this recording over and over again because it's going to live on my website as well as on my YouTube channel, and take some of Rita's suggestions and check out Reiki practitioners who are in your area. And thanks again so much, Rita.
You're welcome, Lisa. It was a pleasure talking to you.